Welcome. I'm Pam Larikia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Izaak Sibley. Hi, Izaak.
Hello.
Now, we connected through your partner, Holly, and I am really excited to learn more about your unschooling experience. And to get us started, can you share with us a bit about you and your family and what everybody's interested in right now?
I myself I worked in audio production, like audio engineering and stuff. I worked at a studio in San Francisco for a while. This was just before our daughter Q was born, and then I worked there for a few months after. And then it shut down because a lot of the audio industry stuff was going to home-based before COVID happened. So this was years ago. So yeah, a lot of that stuff shut down. The one that I worked at shut down. So I decided to be the primary caretaker of Q, and then Holly would work from home and do her job while I looked after Q. So I've been doing that. Here recently, Q's gotten old enough so where I can start looking back into getting into things that are work related. So I've sort of gotten back into it. I've done a few voice acting things, and I've started learning about the stock market, which feels a little bad, but it is what it is. So yeah, I'm also very into Dungeons and Dragons lately. It's sort of been an outlet for voice acting practice as well. Holly is a graphic designer. She works from home and has for quite some time. She is super into like language. She's been learning Japanese recently. Well, she's been learning it for years, but she's gotten heavy back into it recently. Q is she enjoys video games, especially role-playing ones. She likes to go into Minecraft with her friends and set up role plays so that she can role play with them. But yeah, Holly's also actually gotten really into learning about how autistic brains work, because while undocumented or undiagnosed, I am probably somewhere on the autism spectrum, and Q is as well, most likely. So she's gotten into that to sort of better understand us, I think. But yeah.
Have you found that helpful? I mean, her interest in diving in and figuring out how it works, that's been helpful maybe for your communication, for your relationship, for just a better understanding. That's how.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that because I never even considered that I was on the autism spectrum for a long time, until like maybe 10 or so years ago. We were like, maybe. And I was like, surely not. And then like the more she researched into it, I was like, oh man, yeah, probably. So yeah, I mean, it's been helpful for our relationship, and just for me understanding why things tend to work the way they do when I'm involved.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, because I mean, that's something we have conversations about here too. And because with my kids and even with myself growing up, it was really okay to be yourself, and we just accepted and worked with and figured things out that worked for us. And yet there's also a time when it's a bit validating to find that there are other people out and about in the world who experience things more similarly to us, who process things more similarly, etc. So it also adds value too at some point, doesn't it? To just start to recognize, oh yeah, look at these things. Oh yeah, that's the way I look at things, or I process things, or how things unfold when I'm involved.
Yeah. It's funny looking back, because I always identified. I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I always identified with like Spock and Data. And then looking back, it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Big Spock fan here too. Oh, that's really interesting. So I would love to know how your family discovered unschooling and what your move to unschooling looked like.
Well, that was mostly Holly. She was sort of looking into different ways of how we were going to educate Q. When this is before she was born, we were looking into it, and she told me about this, and I was like, well, that seems okay. And then sort of, started talking about it more and more, and at first it seemed just like a curriculum based, like homeschooling, the way it was initially described to me. That's the way I understood it. And then the more she described it to me, I was like, oh, it's not that at all, really. And then the more we got into it, I was like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like anytime I'm interested in something, I go and like learn about it. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that just from the start. So yeah, we did that from day one. Was the plan. And yeah, it's been working out.
Wow, that's really cool that you guys discovered it before. My kids were all in school by the time I discovered homeschooling. Now, it was a number of years ago now. 2002 was when I first discovered, so they were in school before. But it was really interesting. It's so fascinating when you look back at how we learn. Like, so we look back on our school careers, but we also look back, like even through university, when I look, it's like there's so much that I learned for the test and no longer remembered, couldn't do now if I needed to. I knew I could learn it again.
Yeah.
But it didn't stick. So, then you question, what was the value in that for me? Because I need to relearn it. Was there value in knowing it then? But then you start looking at the things that you enjoy, right? The things that are connected, even if you learn them in school, but if it was something you found interesting, it stuck, right?
Yeah.
And you could dive in so much more easily and pick up and learn so much more easily than when it was something disconnected, right?
Yes. I mean, school was not, it wasn't hard for Holly or I. Both of us were good students, got good grades. But my my most valuable school time was we had a gifted program in my elementary and middle schools, and those were the best school days for me, because the way that all the knowledge that I gained there was more real world based. Like there was a class where we were like, okay, we're going to learn how to balance a budget, and I was like, oh, that's actually interesting to me, more so than the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So so getting into that, it seemed to me that why wouldn't you want to learn things that you're going to use? Because anytime I am able to use something, I will retain it. But kind of like you were saying, I learned all these things for tests. I was a good test taker. But if I don't do that, at least on a daily or weekly basis, it just sort of goes away and ends up never having mattered at all. So
right.
So anytime I was able to learn something that I can use, it stays. So
yeah. And what I love too, when you think about kids growing up this way, the things that they're interested in, those are the things that they're going to keep doing. So those are the things that are going to stick. And those are the things they're going to be interested in. You know what I mean? They're going to continue to be interested. Like they're going to weave through their lives and, into their young adult lives, into their adult lives, because this is who they are. And they're learning so much about who they are and things that are interesting to them. So they're creating just like this web of knowledge that is so unique and in that way so helpful to them as an individual, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it's sort of one of my catchphrases around the house is there's value in all knowledge. So I always like to say that whenever, especially because when we were early in the unschooling process, it's a little scary because you start to your kids start to get compared to other kids and where they are. And you're like, well, she's not doing that yet, but she's doing these other things. So, but then like she'd be playing Minecraft, and a lot of people are like, video games are a waste of time and all that, which I don't think. But then she learned to read from playing Minecraft. I'm like, haha, value in all knowledge. There it is again. And then, so yeah, just things like that. And then when you're especially with, it seems with Q and I, the sort of hyper focus that we have, if we jump on something, we dive deep into it, and then it sort of can branch off of that main course, and then you start learning about all these other little things. So yeah, it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I find too, as you know, with that those deep dives into interests, that especially when they're younger, it can be such an interesting window to all sorts of things. Like you were saying, like you deep dive into something, and it connects over here and over here and over here and over here, and reading pops up because there's just reading involved, right?
Yep.
And now all sorts of other things just bubble up because you're just looking through that lens that's super fascinating, and the different pieces you want to get to, you just pick up different skills along the way, right? So almost any interest that you dive into can get you to all sorts of those what they call basic skills. So it's not about learning to read, but if I'm deep into playing Minecraft, eventually I'm picking up some reading, right?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If it's something that you're going to use every day, then it's going to stick. And of course, you're going to use reading every day because there's so much more to be learned if you can read.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love your motto. What was it? Everything, learning is everything.
There's value in all knowledge.
There's value in it. Yes, in all knowledge, because just like you were saying, it's so easy. And it's certainly, as when we first come to unschooling, kind of we value learning that happens in school, like subjects, as more valuable than everyday things, right? That's something that we're taught, that we absorb growing up, that what we learn at school is more valuable, and we need to learn that first before then we can go play and do all the other things. But that all of it is so valuable, and what they choose is valuable to the individual, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So I am curious to hear what your biggest paradigm shift or aha moment has been so far on your unschooling journey. I'm curious how that came about.
I mean, it's got to be the reading thing. Just because, like I said, it can be scary to do anything that's sort of outside of the populist norm, right? So we jump into this, and well, how are you gonna teach your kids how to do anything? We're like, well, we're not exactly. So, and then we're like, well, how are they ever going to learn to read? And you're like, well, we think it's just going to happen. So then whenever Q started to learn to read, we were doing, I don't even remember what it was now, but we were doing something, and she read something and kind of looked at Holly. Did you know she could do that? And then it was like, aha, it is going to work. We were right all along. Yes. So yeah, just whenever she learned something that we didn't like, okay, we're going to sit down and learn this now. Whenever she learned something that we didn't directly influence, that's kind of just a confirmation that, yeah, humans can learn without overbearing direction.
I think for me, each time that kind of happened and I discovered something new, I thought of it as trust, right? I really came to trust the process more and to trust my child more. Each time a little piece happened, that's like, oh yeah, like you said, oh yeah, this is working. This is going to work. It was trust that I had. And that was so valuable for the next moment when you start questioning and wondering and, oh gee, how are they going to pick up that? And then you're peeling back the layers. Why do I think they need to know that? And why do I think that would be helpful to them at this moment? Because that was, for me, another big shift was the idea of, that there's some certain set of knowledge that they should have before a certain age, before like 18 when they graduate or whatever. But to understand that the age at which kids learn things is really only important in the system because they only have a set of years that they're in school, right?
Yeah.
You need to teach them that, so it just gets parsed out year by year by year. But when we made that shift to unschooling, it's like now we can learn it's almost like just in time learning. It's you learn it when you need it, when you're curious about it, when you're interested in it, when it comes up in your life, because you learn it faster, you're more interested in it. And like you were saying, it sticks. But we don't need to, worry so much about the when, because whenever it comes up, maybe they're 20, maybe they're 25, before some little thing like the stock market becomes super interesting to me. And now is when I'm going to learn it, right? Mm-hmm. The age thing kind of disappears.
Yeah, it's it's totally intuitive, but it doesn't feel like it when you're doing it. But like whenever Q like discovers something new, and I'm like, oh, I know so much about that. Get ready for an information dump, and then I stop and think, wait a minute, she's not going to want all of that. And that's the part that's intuitive but doesn't feel like it, is that people will learn things when they're ready to learn them. And you can't shove knowledge at someone and have them take it all. So it's sort of a patience thing where you're like, okay, well, I can tell her little bits about things and see if she's interested in any of it. And if she is, I'll tell her more. And then if not, she'll probably get there at some point. And then if she wants the help with that, I can help with that. But yeah, that's so, and it's so intuitive because everyone does it. Everyone like gets into something and then have someone come up to them and just start spouting all the information like, whoa. I'm just on the surface here. Just let me get there. And it's hard to be on both sides of that, right? It's hard to be the person just learning it and just, this is what the part that I'm interested in right now. And then it's hard to be the person who already knows all that and sort of hold back like, okay, I don't want to overwhelm you just yet.
I love that because that was something too that I recognized and actively focused on holding back. The other piece was that sometimes if I jumped in, like, so they were interested in something that I loved and I knew lots about, but in trying to meet them there, so often maybe they had come from a different direction, and maybe they were going in a different direction. Like I just dumped a bunch of stuff on them that was basically meaningless because that wasn't the framework through which they were looking at that that topic or that piece of information. And I just kind of kicked them off course. It took many experiences where they'd be like, yeah, okay. Or even they say, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that. And that was yet another layer, learning not to take that personally. Like that wasn't a judgment of me. It was just not information that they were interested in the moment. So there was a lot of work to do around that too. But yeah, when I could hold back and let them follow their curiosity, like so often all those little bits that I had or wanted to share would come up in conversation, but on their timetable. Mm-hmm. So maybe later that day, maybe through a question, maybe through a comment, conversation, but there would be authentic, real times when those things would bubble up versus me going, oh my gosh, yes, and just doing a brain dump on them. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's partially due to the fact that, I was raised in the school system. So I was taught, here's how you learn. Let me tell you how to learn things. And it's like I'm a drummer. And so we had the practice pad out one day and Q started messing with it. And I was like, haha, let me show you how to do that. And then I was like, wait a minute. That's not how to do it. Because, when I was learning drumming growing up, it's like, okay, we're going to start with the rudiments. And this is how you play drums. And then when she got it out, I was like, she's just like messing around with it. Just let her figure it out for a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I love the music example is really cool too, because that is another area where we think there's, a step by step. You have to do this stuff in the beginning and then this, and then you practice this and you move on slowly. But, my youngest, Michael, is very into music now, like over the last few years. And he just leaving him to play along with the guitar. And then he brought keyboard in and it wasn't until a few years of him playing around himself, then he's like, oh, you know what? I'd like to try some lessons because I have some, detailed questions and things I'm curious about. So now I want somebody who I can talk to at that level.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating to see, even in the areas where we think, oh, this is something they need to do in a right order, so we need to start with lessons and then move through that, or else, they're going to pick up bad habits, or they're not going to, that it really, really doesn't need to be that way, that they can explore things in the ways that they're interested in. They can just play around with things for a while, and they pick up so much through that. And then, lessons might be down the road or not, but it's about their path and the way they're learning things and how deeply they want to get into learning the thing, right? It's so fascinating to follow their process rather than to throw one on top of them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough sometimes to hold back, like especially when you say, like with the music example, say I'm going to start playing piano or cue wood, and I would be like, haha, well, wait, let me teach you all about music theory first, so you know everything you're going to be doing. And then it's like, well, maybe just discover some of it on your own. I think that it's way more rewarding to figure something out on your own than to just be told it. I mean, that is actually, I mean, growing up in school, that's how I learned math for the most part. Like a bunch of the way I tested at like a 10th grade math level in like third grade or something. And it was because I could figure the things out on my own first without being told how they were. And then I got into higher math and I sort of stopped at the 10th grade level because everything's like, here's the formulas you need. You just memorize them. I was terrible at that. If I didn't understand why, then I couldn't really figure it out. So if no one told me why, then I was just like, okay, I guess I'll give it the best shot. But yeah, it's again tough to hold back from well, let me show you the scales. Here's the C scale, rather than just being like, figure it out. See if you can see if you have questions, come to me. But if you want to just figure it out, go for it.
Yeah. And you know what? That was one thing that you mentioned, music theory. This is very interesting because that was one of the things that Michael really wanted to dive into once he decided he wanted to find some lessons and do that. But what it did was just, for much of it, give language and framework to stuff he picked up along the way, right? So it was just a few extra connections, like, oh yeah, look at that bigger picture to all this stuff that I've been figuring out, and it makes so much sense, right? Because you're putting together what you've experienced versus being told this is the way it works. And it really is so much of figuring something out, and learning something is also figuring out all the pieces that don't work and the ways things don't work, because that gives you so much more context. Like, I think of learning like as this web, and if you're just told, here's a formula, here's the theory, here's the way you do it, you just learn that little path of the web, right? You don't pick up all the other pieces that explain the why behind it, the context behind it, why the other stuff doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a huge, huge difference. And again, that's why, another piece when we come to unschooling is not judging or even thinking about mistakes or failures. There isn't wrong. There is just discovering what works and what doesn't work, and to try something out that's top of mind and that you're curious, I think this will work to do the thing that I'm trying to do. And then you try it and it doesn't work. You learn just as much that way, right? Because
absolutely, yeah.
You learn why that piece, you have that connection, and it like just leads you to, oh, okay, you pick up a little bit more from that experience, and now you just try something different. Trying things is like so fundamental to learning versus just being told this is the right path.
Yeah, definitely. I took a music theory class in college, and at the beginning of the class, the teacher was kind of asking what everyone sort of wanted to get out of the class, and I was kind of worried about it. I was like, well, I want to learn some about music theory, but without being formulaic in the way I write music. I don't want to lose the discovery part of it.
Yeah, that's a huge piece. And I think coming to Unschool, that I love what you said before, how so much of it is intuitive, like it makes so much sense, and yet we still have to stop ourselves from jumping into it so much. Like we have just absorbed growing up this whole idea of being productive, of doing things right the first time, of being efficient, etc. And I think that's something as parents, as we're deschooling, we're playing around with so many of those ideas and coming to understand the value of those things. You know what I mean? I think, that kind of that factory mindset, we need to be productive. We need to get things done efficiently and effectively and quickly, etc., has really kind of permeated everything to a point where that outlook on learning and on just living and how we make choices in our lives has really been detrimental, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, like, because it's sort of it's fun to think about discovering something that no one else has discovered, but like with the age of the internet, so many things have been discovered, but we still long for that discovery moment. And if we just let ourselves discover things, even if they've already been discovered, it's still very valuable, I think.
Yeah. And we still enjoy it. We still get that rush because we're discovering it for the first time for ourselves. And that connection is burned so much more in our mind and in our experience, right? Like our understanding is deeper when we make that connection ourselves, I think, rather than it's just something that we're told. It's like, oh, okay, those go together.
Definitely.
Yeah. Something else I was really curious to hear more about is how you and Holly have set up your lives around your choices to embrace unschooling, to spend time together as a family, and do things that you all find interesting and fun. I've gotten a little bit of a glimpse through Holly. She's in the network too, so I would love to hear you talk about that.
Well, as far as like setting up our lives, we didn't have to do very much because Holly's worked at home for years, and then, like I said, I was going into the studio for only a few months after he was born before that shut down, and I was like, well, I'll just stay home then, and then you can still work without having to take breaks if something happens, and so it was a very smooth transition for us in that respect. And then we've always lived in a pretty small space. Like right now, we live in a studio. I'm actually in a closet. So, so I mean, we each sort of do our own things, but we're in a small space so that there's no sort of inhibition for if something comes up and you're like, hey, I'd like to get input from the other members of my family. There's not that, like I said, inhibition to sort of ask, because we're just right there. So that it has been helpful for us, I think. But we all play games together and stuff as well. Like I said, Hugh's really into video games, so we play some stuff on the PlayStation, and then we play some stuff on the computers, and then we've also we played board games more before than we do now, which I think we used to live in Tahoe, and about once a year the power goes out for like anywhere from a day to a week due to heavy snow. So that would be the board game week. And we would get the board games out and the little flashlights and stuff and play board games together.
Very fun. And you guys have traveled around some as well?
Yeah, Holly and Q more so than I prefer to stay at home. But yeah, we've lived in San Francisco to Lake Tahoe, Chicago. We live in LA now. Q and Holly have been to Italy with Holly's mom. And then I guess, yeah, before Q was born, and we're looking to go back in a year or two, hopefully. We've been to Japan, which was very cool. We think Q will really like Japan because of the all the arcades and that sort of culture. But yeah, I mean, if we've been, of course, Holly and I are both from Oklahoma and Kansas, so we've been back there several times. But yeah, we've traveled quite a bit, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I loved hearing about that because when we choose unschooling, there can be, as we try to create a lifestyle where we can support that. Like you said, you guys live in small places because you'd rather spend more time together, and just then you can take that small place and just go to all the different locations that you're talking about, and you can check those out for longer lengths of time. Like you said, Japan maybe in a couple of years, etc. So it's just the things that you guys would find interesting. Like you want to take Q there because you think she'll really love it, so that you have that freedom to be able to be more flexible with how you guys just be in the world, right?
Yeah.
Versus feeling fixed in a specific location or with certain jobs, etc. Just it just seems like you guys have chosen a much more flexible lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely made decisions to do that, but it's also been somewhat from necessity, just budgeting and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of a combination of choice and necessity. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the necessity piece and the constraints piece, like they don't need to be negatives. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
that you work with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like doing, like, I mean, you get those sort of things sometimes in school, like write a song but only using this number of keys or whatever, and it sort of helps you to figure out ways to do things.
Yeah. I mean, that is one thing we talk a lot about here, and actually enjoy in certain areas constraints, because it helps. I don't know. I find it helps me be more creative, right? Because when I've got those pieces that are fixed, it's like, ooh, now I can really play. How can I maneuver through all this stuff to get to where I'm hoping to go? So yeah, we look at constraints pretty positively, actually.
Yeah. I think they're cool. It's when it's wide open, I'm always just overwhelmed, like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
But when you say, okay, well, you can't do this part, like, oh, well then, I think I've got a solution for that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because, like, on one hand, if it's a constraint or something that we want to push against, absolutely. Yet there are lots that aren't in our control, right? Things that are just life things that are constraints. And so it's also super fun to work with them. Yeah, I don't know. I find that very interesting because, on one hand, it's, we're unschooling, we can do whatever we want on one hand. Yet there's practicalities, there is creativity, it's just been never ending fun. There's things go sideways, things go badly, life is life. But also when you're open and creative and you're just thinking about the possibilities, it's fun to try to navigate through those things to accomplish the things that we're curious and eager to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, any kind of puzzle. It's like if I'm given a puzzle and then told it is possible to solve, and I'm like, oh, well, then I will figure that out.
Yeah. So that's a great lead into what is your favorite thing about your unschooling days right now?
I mean, it's mainly just the fact that we are all able to do sort of what we want to do and still have the sort of support of each other in doing those things. So, I mean, most days Q will get on with friends and do role plays, and that sort of leaves Holly and I to just pursue the things that we enjoy pursuing. And then if she needs something, we can just we can easily stop and say, okay, what'd you need? So, I mean, that's, I mean, pretty easily the best thing about it, right? Is that it sort of allows everyone to do things that fulfill them and still be able to get help from other members of the family.
Yeah, it really feels, I don't know, when we moved to unschooling and, got deeper into it, it really felt like and continues to feel like we're a team, right? And we're doing our things and we're helping each other out. And somebody gets more of the energy when they need it. Somebody gets, extra space when they need it, like all those things, but we're just all figuring it out together. It just felt so much more refreshing when we were dealing with the realities of who we are and the things that we do together versus just like an outside idea of here's what parents should be doing, here's what kids should be doing, here's how things should look, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It was so nice to be able to release that framework and really live together. It was the same kinds of things, but when they're actually bubbling up in the moment, it's amazing, isn't it? How we can give 10 minutes a day, a week, when something comes up that's really important to somebody, we can find ways to make it work for them, can't we? But we can really just be living together.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, part that feels really nice is that there's no mandated curriculum. Like there's no, well, today we're going to learn multiplication, and then nobody wants to do that. Well, we're going to do it anyway. So it's nice to not have to do that, because like eventually it's gonna come up, because that's kind of, math is pretty important in the world. So eventually it's going to come up and we'll be like, yeah, this is how you do that. And they're like, oh, cool. All right.
And it goes so much faster, doesn't it? When it bubbles up in the moment, like they're curious about it. They want to know something. So when you get into it, it because it's just come up in conversation, you don't end up in like that teacher voice. You don't end up in this is how I think you should be learning it or looking at it. It's just come up and they're curious and they've asked a question or two and it's like, oh, this is this. And they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And then off they go, right?
Yeah. And it's sort of, I catch myself going into that teacher mode occasionally still, but like she has some friends that go to school, and they're like, well, we do, multiplication or whatever. And so Q will come ask us about it because all of her friends are doing it. And so we'll start to teach her a few things about like math concepts. And I really have to watch myself before I get too far into it. And she'll just like, what's the answer to this? And I'm like, haha, well, you figure it out. And she's like, I don't want to figure it out. Like, yeah, you're right. And then, eventually after just telling her the answer to most of these questions, she'll understand it. And it's like, oh, that's how you're learning. Sorry.
Oh, I love that because she can definitely be picking up the patterns by getting the answer. So following them and just answering their questions versus, oh, I think you should be learning it this way, and show your work and you figure it out. And how do you think you spell that? All those questions are actually getting in the way of whatever their process is. Like when they're asking a question, like, how do you spell that? Or what's the answer to that? That is the most meaningful thing for them to get in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. So when we just answer what they're curious about, that is so much more helpful than us presupposing that we know a better way for them to pick it up. Because like you said, after you've answered it a few times or however many times over how many days, weeks, months, how do you spell this? How do you spell this? They pick up those patterns, they learn those things, and eventually they put that picture together, but they're putting it together in the way that makes the most sense to them, not the way we think, or that would make the most sense to us. Like we all individually have different ways of learning and picking things up. So to respect that we can just help them build the picture the way they want to it's a big step, isn't it?
Yeah, that has probably been the hardest part for me. Is okay, you're learning it differently than I learned it. I'm gonna let this happen.
Oh, that is interesting. All right. Last question. As an unschooling dad, what piece of advice would you like to share with dads who are maybe considering unschooling or just starting out on this journey?
I mean, I don't know. It's just it. If you believe that humans are curious, then it's probably gonna work. I mean, it's. I don't know if that there's any like one piece of advice, especially for dads specifically, that's other than trust that humans are curious and will want to learn things. And because of the world we live in, they're going to pretty much have to learn the things that you're going to need to learn to do every day. So it kind of works out, yeah, I think it works out because you have to know how to anything that you're doing every day, you have to know how to do. That's and anything you're not doing every day, you probably don't have to know how to do. So again, it works out.
I do love that. And that that very beautifully rolls back on itself, right? If it's something that they're going to be doing every day, they're going to learn how to do it because they're doing it every day, right? So it just is a self-fulfilling kind of prophecy. And to get to that point where humans are just curious and just living day to day is going to bring up those things and they're going to want to learn things. Those are a couple of really fundamental shifts. I know they feel so basic, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
But like we've been talking about a lot, so much of what we pick up growing up ourselves is that, learning is hard. Schools know what we should be learning. They know better than just what we're living, right? That other kind of learning is more valuable than what we learn just from living. So there is a lot of work, internal work, I think, self-reflective work for us as parents, dads, moms, whatever, to do when we that really gets us to that real essence, that basicness, the foundation of unschooling, right? That we learn what we do. When we do things, is a great time to learn the things, and that humans are curious.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's significantly easier to unschool now than say 100 years ago, because there's so much information that's so easily and readily accessible should you get the urge to learn it. Whereas before, sort of knowledge was kind of gate kept by experts or libraries that may not be very close to you. You may have to walk several towns away. But now it's, if you want to know something, there's no big obstacle to finding that information anymore. So just and then making learning not a chore, making it not an experience that is something that we start to not enjoy doing. Because like going to school for me, it was I all through like elementary school and middle school, I was, like I said, a very good test taker, so it was all great. But the longer I did it, the more sort of the burnout started to approach, because it was, you will learn this in this amount of time, the way we tell you to learn it. So by the end of high school, I was kind of done with learning. I didn't want to do it anymore. And anytime that the thought of learning something new came in my head, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I could do that right now. But sort of going on this the unschooling journey that we've gone through with Q, it's, started to make learning a good experience again. Just because it's not something that has to be done on someone else's terms. Like I can learn what I want, when I want, how I want, makes those discovery moments big again.
Yeah. I think that is another huge shift, is because so often, you hear people graduating when they're leaving high school or university. It's like, I don't have to learn anymore, right? Because that
Yeah.
that system is now fully equated with learning.
Yeah.
And is entirely a chore and not fun anymore. So anything that smacks of learning, for many years can well turn people off, and they ignore them even if it would be interesting to them, because they have such a bad taste left in their mouth from the experience, right?
Yeah. I used to consider myself a person who doesn't like to read. But I found myself, I'm reading constantly. I just always thought that I don't like to read because I didn't enjoy reading the books because we were made to read certain books in English class. And I was just always, I am a person that doesn't like to read. Okay, I'll take that. And then like I said, I'm always usually like articles or different things on the internet, but I'm constantly reading and I enjoy it. I just didn't ever equate those two things until we started doing unschooling.
Yeah, that's huge, because my husband's the same. It's like, I hate reading. I don't read. I never read. And he is constantly reading forums and articles and all sorts of things online. And then with one of my sons, I don't like books. I don't like reading, yet audiobooks for hours and hours and hours. Podcasts, like, there are so many ways to bring in information but so many of us have grown up thinking, reading books, that's the only like acceptable thing, right?
Right.
Nothing, everything else is trash. So yeah, I mean, that's what's fascinating when you start unschooling and start peeling back those layers. There is so much that we've absorbed that just kind of gets in our own way some. That when you take the time to just ask yourself some questions and look at it, it's like, oh, you know what? That's not really true. You can see what they were trying to do with it, but it's not really true in our lives. And learning is fun. And I'm reading lots and I'm taking in all sorts of information. So yeah, I think that is just that's a useful thing, I think, for new unschooling dads to think about, is just, be willing to ask yourself some questions and peel back some layers around it to really discover what it means, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Izaak. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks. I had a good time.
Yay. So is there a place that people can connect with you online if they'd like to chat?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I post on YouTube. It's at
There you go. We'll put a link to that in the show notes if anyone's interested. That's perfect. All right. Thanks again, Izaak. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.